Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Third Thing. I am Roger Hanson. Today, I have with me Mark Edworthy, my, what was the word for it again?
Your beloved co-host.
My beloved co-host. There you go.
Excellent.
And with him is my host, who I am a tech guy with who has his own show called The Automatic Pilot. We are all three here together, and we're going to be talking about cool stuff that we've actually been having a conversation about here lately when it comes to spiritual, not only spiritual but metaphysics as well as physics. A lot of things do go into what this topic is, for me at least, because I've been doing a bit of research into it. And it concerns the lotus, just the lotus plant. So, to kind of give you a background of it, where we left off on this topic last time, whenever we were talking about it, I was discussing how across the Indo-European and the Afro-Asiatic and Eastern traditions, the lotus has always been linked to like the mind choosing direction and spirit and rising above instinct and awareness. It's like a guiding action. Now, in a lot of discussions that I've had with Otto here lately, we've always been talking about intention. But for me, I also see it as intention as vibration. Okay? And the lotus, in relation to that, I look at the lotus as coherent growth. And that's in a metaphysical sort of way. And in a more metaphysical way of framing it, intention is seen as like a vibration, a focus pattern, sort of like a direction that's shaping internal energy. You know what I mean? So to me, the lotus embodies like coherent structure, as directed energy, and emergence. You always hear people talk about emergence and resonance, and I believe that's also what it's all about. It's a coherent structure that directs it. You know what I mean? Rather than chaos. So that's sort of how I view the lotus when it comes to what it represents on those levels. Now, it's also like the biological mirror of like a psychological alignment too. If you look at it in that kind of perception, I guess you could say. Now, the lotus basically is like a living metaphor for intention because it embodies growth through adversity. Now, I've also had conversations about, like, if you take a look at how the lotus grows, usually lotuses grow in muddy, boggy areas where there's water all around it. And if you pay attention to how a lotus grows, it grows up and out of that mud and muck. And if it survives growing up out of that mud and muck, it spreads its leaves. But the thing about it is those leaves never touch the water. It always makes sure that it stays above the water and it's not damaged by that water. And I find that as being a form, a metaphor too. You know what I mean? It actually embodies that kind of thing on a biological level when you look at the actual growth of the lotus plant.
I always thought in I can't remember. It's Chinese, isn't it? Not Japanese. Chinese, Japanese, one or the other. I always thought ornamental lotus plants grew on top of the water, so the leaves were actually touching the water. But because it's ornamental, the water's generally fairly still.
Well, from everything I've seen of the lotus plant, like the leaves are never laying on the water.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, the flower itself is up above the water, but the rest of the plant is underneath. You know, it's sort of like that tree motif that we were talking about earlier about, you know, a tree. When you look at a tree, you realize that as you look at the branches reaching up, there's another system of branching roots that go below. So you've got that thing that's in both worlds. And I think, you know, a lot of the symbolism of the lotus comes from the fact that, as you pointed out, it grows, its origin is in the muck down at the bottom of the lake, or wherever it's growing. And, you know, we've probably all been in, you know, muddy lakes where you step down and your feet just go into this slimy ooze. It's like this rich, dark soil. And from this, the lotus comes from that muck up through the water, which is also if you like, it's kind of messy, but it's less messy than the muck. You're coming out of the mud up into the muddy water. As you go up, the water becomes more clear. You come closer to the sun, so you're getting closer to enlightenment. And then when you're up on top of the lake, you simply see this beautiful lotus blossom atop the lake. And you don't see this long stem reaching from the sun all the way down through the increasingly dark depths down into that mud. It's very Jungian, if you like. It's like, you know, how we have to accept and understand that there are parts of us that have little to do with that blossom we like to concentrate on, but at the same time is completely necessary, is an indissoluble part. Because if you say, oh, I only like this spiritual, bright, in the sun thing, and you cut it off from that root, the plant will wither, the blossoms will wither, just like with us. Even, you know, in our best moments, and we're acting from our best instincts, we're fulfilling our ethical and moral duties, and we're being virtuous and generous and this and that, and we're really happy and living our lives to the full. We can't then say, well, I'm going to completely ignore these darker aspects, are the things that are not necessarily bad, but we don't like to concentrate on, things we're less proud of, things we don't talk about as much in our society. Food. We always talk about gourmet preparation, but really, you know, food is kind of crass. You've got to like chew this stuff up. If you ever cough and spit out partly chewed food, it's not very pretty, and then you digest it, and then you have the products of digestion, which again are not very pretty. This is something we all eat. This is the first thing in the Buddhist catechism. What is one? One is that all things subsist on feeding, not just emotional feeding, but also physical feeding. So we tend to like, and again, it's, you know, in a pathological case, you know, people really hate that they have to eat, and you get like anorexic people. But the fact is, we have aspects of ourselves that are very basic, the earth, you know, just keeping the body alive, bathing it and feeding it, and, you know, medicining it when it's sick. But we keep our minds concentrated on our brilliant minds, on our thoughts, on the things we can create, poetry, art, a really well-written code, a sales account that balances at the end of the way. I mean, all of these things are really ultimately abstract. And it's what we take most of our pride in. Very few of us take pride in having regular bowel movements, although you wouldn't know it from the laxative commercials on TV.
Yeah.
So I think that the lotus is kind of, one of the reasons it resonates is because it encapsulates this so well, that we do have this brilliant flowering, but it's completely dependent on all the things we have to do to keep that little, you know, I've heard the brain called the flowering of the human nervous system. At the top, you know, you got the whole nervous system, which is really all one thing. But we ignore all the rest of it. We just think of this wonderful brain. And same way with the lotus, we don't think about all the roots, the muck, the water, all the things necessary to maintain it, the sunlight, the micronutrients. We just concentrate on that. So that's my take on it. And of course, it is a very important symbol in the East, Buddhism, Hinduism. I believe the ancient Egyptians also had a lot of lotus symbolism. So And they're beautiful plants. I mean, it's natural that they would draw human attention. You know, you see something dramatic like that in nature, and of course, you're going to imbue it with meaning. So,
Okay, I forgot to correct myself. India, Northeast India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Nucifer, or Latin, also known as Padma, or Kamala. But yeah, I was going to sort of go on from your sort of human body concept, where you've got the roots sort of grounding you to the sort of ground, to and the leaves being a sort of analogy for all sense organs, or eyes, skin, and then the flower being the more of the sort of resulting thinking process. That makes sense.
Yeah. You can extend the metaphor a lot, but yeah, I think that's definitely. In fact, now that I think of it, I've seen representations of people talk about the chakras, which are this kind of it's like a metaphysical anatomy. It's not actual physical, and no one's ever dissected a corpse and found a chakra. But there are these what are supposed to be energy centers in the body, and you start with the lowest chakra, which is like right down at the base of the spine, which has to do with autonomic function, just breathing, being alive. Up through the chakras, there's the second chakra. It has to do with the generative organs, so those instincts that we all have. Then up to the where the stomach is, more or less, and that has to do with not just feeding, but with territoriality, like mammalian politics. This is mine, my food, your food, meum and tuum, as we used to say. And through the heart chakra, which has to do with love and everything. It goes up through the throat and the forehead. And finally, when you reach the highest point, I've seen it represented as a lotus. So when you said that, Mark, it's like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that symbolism visually used, where it hadn't occurred to me. But yeah, I can see where, again, the lotus, and it also has that long stalk, which is like a path, a roadway. I've seen that, like, either the yogi sitting in meditation trying to draw the energy straight up the spine, so it's like the spine. And in the study of the what's called the Holy Kabbalah, which is a very complicated subject, which is probably too much to go into today, but there is something they call the middle pillar. They have an arrangement of, they call Sephiroth, basically different emanations of God. If I start talking about it, it'll take hours. But basically, there is something that talks about taking that route straight up to the highest level, which is, in this case, union with God. In Buddhism, you would talk about release. Every tradition has its own language for this. But, yeah.
Well, I mean, I understand exactly what you're talking about there, because that's what I've been finding out when it comes to a lot of the beliefs when it comes to Buddhism. And, the whole thing that I got out of it was like, the lotus, it is metaphor, and what it represents is growth through adversity. Then you have directionality. Then you have the purity of focus, mindfulness. I believe there's evolution of consciousness that they talk about too. I'm not quite sure. But what it basically comes down to is the ability to act from the inside outward, and that brings you up to like enlightenment. And I've noticed that the difference between for example, Buddhism and Christianity, when it comes to the whole concept of heaven, a lot of people who are Buddhists, they see heaven as being a psychological enlightenment, and it's not a location. It's mind training, and I've heard of it being called the Five Remembrances, but I remember. I'm having a brain fart right now, but it's
Well, there's so much material. It's tough to keep track of it all. Yeah, the lotus definitely is important in Buddhism. It's like I said, it's a symbol that really lends itself to that. And as you say, there certainly is adversity in coming up through the muck. You know, the Buddha used to talk about there are some who come in darkness and go in darkness, some who come in darkness and go in light, some who go in light and come in darkness, and predictably some who come in light and go in light. And he's talking about like the circumstances of our lives. And there are some of us whose lives we've come into a very dark life. And you could say that's like the little bulb at the bottom of the lake. And some of us are able to reach toward that light. That's that, you know, when you talked about directionality, the plant goes for the sunlight, for the air, for the things that are up above it, that it knows is good for it. Even though it can't experience them then, even though it's going through this hardship and adversity, it comes from the darkness of the mud and it goes finally into light. And, you know, we want to be going into light whenever we can, you know. Five remembrances or the five recollections, I usually say remembrances, I've seen recollections. That is something to always keep in mind. And it's something that a good Buddhist should reflect on as often as possible, but at least every morning and every night, which is that you are subject to aging. That's normal. The Thai word is that they translate as normal. So aging is normal. Aging is unavoidable. It's usually translated. Illness. You are subject to illness. It is unavoidable. It is normal. You're supposed to be ill. You're going to die. And that's inevitable. It happens to us all. It is normal. There is nothing of the vast majority of people who have been born are now dead. This is simply normal. There's nothing out of the ordinary here. And that you are going to be separated from all that you hold dear. In other words, things are going to change. You're not going to be as strong anymore. You're going to lose friends. You're going to have people come into your life that you don't necessarily like very much, and the people that you like are, you know, things will change. There will be separation from the things that you most want. But the final thing to remember is the thing that gives us power, that I've talked about before, which is basically we are the result of our actions. We are the heirs of our actions. We are determined by our actions. We are related through our actions. All that we do, for good or for ill, will eventually come back and bite us on the ass. Buddha didn't say it quite like that. Right. But basically, that what we do always has consequences. The decisions we make are what make the future. And we cannot change the past. And I talk about this a lot. The past it's written in. It's like the blockchain. It's like it's part of you. And the present moment is composed of three things, which is the results of your past intentions, your past actions. It sounds really exotic if I say karma or karma, but that's really all he's talking about. To the Buddha, karma, it's hard to translate, but it means intentions, right? Karma is actually a mental state. If you examine what's in the suttas very carefully, it is an intention and it is an action, because all mental intentions are actions. So what you have now is the result of what you've done, what you thought, what has happened to you, right? So this moment is composed of the results of your past intentions, your present intentions, and the results of those present intentions. In other words, things that you intend, that you act on now, are going to produce results now. And you can see them very quickly. Like if you touch a hot stove with your finger, it's like, things are going to happen right away. Now, you can't change what has already happened, obviously. You can't change the results of something. But what you can change is your intention right now. And this is where free will comes into Buddhism. Because the decisions you make now are not determined by everything that's happened to you. You have the ability to change what you're doing. Because ultimately, what's important in Buddhism is actions. You are determined by your actions. You're the heir of your actions. Everything about you, everything that you relate to is related through your actions. That means you have power there. If you can break out of being so tied down in the past or so tied up with the future that you look and see what you're doing right now. And not just that, not just like grooving in the moment. Wow, I don't have to worry about the past. It's not real. The future isn't real. I can just like chill out and like, ooh. Yeah, there's a certain amount of relaxation there when you don't have when you're no longer giving that emotional investment to these things that have happened to us and that we can't change them, man. But it's like we love to spend so much time looking back. If only I'd done this, I could be like this. If only, you're living in an imaginary world right there. You don't even see the desk in front of you, right? Mm-hmm. It's so easy to do. I do it all the time myself. This is something I work against every day. We all do, right? But if we can be here and not let that bother us, we can see things a lot more clearly. And if this is the mindfulness thing. You keep something in mind. You keep in mind that you want to make the best decisions you can. And in Buddhism, they talk about you have to make the decisions that are going to be best for your long-term happiness. And you have to sacrifice a short-term pleasure to get a greater good later on. Now, when they were first translating this, I'm sure I've mentioned this before. These guys, they're like, what? These are the secret teachings? This can't be it. This is so simple. It's like, yeah, they'll try. Just try, man. People have been doing it in Buddhism for 2,600 years, and it's they know what they're talking about. It's tough to do, but it really most Buddhism that I've found is actually a lot of it is just common sense. Put off doing something now just because you want to have that drink or that extra piece of cake or whatever it is. You think, yes, I'm going to feel really good now. You're going to feel like hell in an hour or the next day. That's just simple. You want to do the things that are going to be. And in Buddhism, the best thing for your long-term happiness is to no longer cling to ephemeral and changing things. The things that we cling to are inconstant. They change. They're not the same. And how can you be happy if you're clinging to things? You cling to the body. Body's going to go away, man. It might take a while. But I'm 62. I know where if I speak. I'm in my 62nd year, I should say. We have faith in movie stars. They die. Politicians, they go belly up or they don't meet expectations. In food, well, their digestion fails eventually. So this expands until you see more and more that these aren't the things to make your happiness dependent upon. Doesn't mean you shouldn't look at them. Just not make that emotional investment. We were talking about this, I think it was the other day, Roger, when, the Buddha's advice is if you've made a horrible mistake, you look at it, you admit that you did it, right? You have to be truthful with yourself. You resolve not to do it again. And another thing in Buddhism is you should talk to someone further along the path about it. You have to be willing to admit it, talk about it. You don't hide it from yourself, because when you hide this stuff from yourself, it festers, makes delusion, which is tough because when you're deluded, you don't know you're deluded because you're deluded, right? And you talk to someone else about it, and then you resolve not to do it again, and you don't beat yourself up over it. You don't just sit there wailing and crying and hurting yourself over it, because that means it's won, and you don't want it to win.
You point out faith in celebrities or politicians or whatever. As well, we all know that celebrity culture can get out of hand. If you look at especially younger people, they have a lot of faith in other people or well-known faces. And I think really I've always taken the approach to ignore that concept of having faith in authoritative figures, and consider taking responsibility for yourself.
Yeah,
like you say, you make the decisions. You sure, a celebrity could be promoting that decision, but at the end of the day, you are making that decision.
Yeah, I mean that's very good too that you developed that at an early age too. Because like I do find that what you're discussing right there actually is developed by a lot of people normally as they get older. You know what I mean? It makes perfect sense. as an older person now, but I also remember when I was 17 and I was really big into heavy metal. You know what I mean? And everything in my life was just influenced by music. And you know, don't get me wrong, it's okay to love music. It is really okay. And I still listen to heavy metal today. I listen to all kinds of music, but I don't let it dictate my life like it used to. You know what I mean? Everything rotated around music, it rotated around girls, it rotated around this, everything, you know what I mean? And
Right.
and when it comes to what you were talking about, Otto, with the five remembrances, that really rings out to me with a lot of the stuff that me and Bob Dub used to talk about when it came to dualities, you know, and I know that it's a full circle, okay? Like in this conversation when I first started doing the third thing, I wanted to start talking about like triality and duality and stuff like that. So, you know, I started getting into the duality aspects, which what we really began with was like cosmic principles, which concern duality and the emergence of the third element, which later became triality. You know what I mean? And the one thing about karma that I noticed, the end result to all of this is like all of this stuff that you're talking about eventually goes into reincarnation, to where it actually makes you into what you will become in a later life because of the things that are happening now. You know what I mean?
Well, not just a later life, but this life as well. And,
Right.
you know, when Mark was talking about, you know, what he was talking about is basically what I would call demonstrating agency. You know, having agency over yourself, over your life by making these decisions instead of, like you were saying, Roger, just making the decision based on a song or what a hero of yours looks like. You know, I remember asking my father once, many, many years ago, when I was a kid, I asked him, why do you smoke cigarettes? That was back when it was like the big anti-smoking stuff was going on. And he smoked like a pack and a half a day of Salem's every day till they put him in the hospital. They wouldn't let him have them anymore. So he said, he thought about it. And he said, probably because Humphrey Bogart smoked. Which was one of the most honest things I ever heard him say. And so, yeah, when you're letting you're surrendering your agency to these, and in Buddhism, the one good translation of the term is these becomings. You become this thing. You take on this identity. I'm the guy that's the heavy metal guy, you know. Whereas Mark is taking on the identity of the man who's going to take charge and read the fine print. You know, this is demonstrating agency, and I would argue that. And then, as you point out, Roger, too, this is something more common with older people because it's these things, like Aristotle says, excellence comes from practice. It comes from doing it. You know, Mark made a decision at one point to do this. Roger, you made a decision to stop listening to certain things and taking more charge of your life. And when the Buddha is talking about this, again, he's not talking about any secret formula. It's like my joke about, you know, I lost all that weight a couple of years ago, and I'm like, you know, here's my secret. I ate less and I exercised more. It's amazing. You know, this, you know, here's a life hack, guys. Eat less and exercise. Who'd have thought, you know? It's just that so many people simply fail to put it into practice. And Roger, I know guys older than me that are still living out the heavy metal thing.
Right.
You know, and that they just don't have. And, you know, I was just playing out at that bar, and I saw guys my age and older, and they're like partying like they were 20. It's like, I got an iced tea. You know, I'm having an iced tea, and I didn't want to drink that because I'd have to pee too much, you know, because I'm old. Geez, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Right.
And you know, I mean, there were one of the cool things about going out was that I learned that you don't have to drink actually to enjoy yourself out of it. You hang out with the other sober people and look at the drunks, and it's hilarious. Look at that idiot. You know, it's actually. But
You know,
yeah, no, it's important to realize. I'll finish real quick that karma. So many people say, "Oh well, karma," you know, means that anything that happens to you now you deserve. And it's like, you did it to you. It's like, no. It's like, it locks you in. It's a big argument. It's like, oh, it's to make serfs happy with being serfs. Well, you're a serf this lifetime because you were bad, but if you're a really good serf, maybe you'll be a king next lifetime. That's not what it's about at all. It's about saying that, yeah, everything happening to you is the result of your intentions, but you can change those intentions, because really Buddhism is all about action, and you can always change an action.
Right.
And we've all done that, and that's part of getting older. That's part of wisdom. We change our actions, we learn, and we adapt ourselves. So, the Buddha is just giving us common sense a lot of the times. But sometimes people need to have it spelled out and put in an authoritative, system to get them to do it. That helps me.
I just wanted to clear things up. I still listen to heavy metal, and I have no problems with it. The thing of it is I don't let it lead me like a dog on a leash. You know what I mean? I mean, music is beautiful, but you gotta make sure that it's not dictating who you are and making it. You know what I mean?
Music is a consciousness-altering thing, man. It alters your consciousness. It's a drug of a sort,
Mm-hmm.
The Buddha was always careful about music. He was always like, monks aren't allowed to be musicians.
That's sad.
Well, the thing with music is, as we all know, music does alter your consciousness. Music can make you happy. Music can make you sad. Music can make you ready to march off to war. Yeah. And I've talked a lot about the country music industry, which it's basically designed to make you miserable and sad, and people enjoy this. It's just an amazing thing, and you've got this ability to do this, and if you do it unskillfully, you can really lead people into really bad emotional states. So the Buddha was always kind of ambivalent about music and music makers. But I was kind of like weird about that. I was like, huh? But then I just started noticing, and it's like, yeah, I play this song and I want to cry, and I play this song and I want to sing and dance and skip around, and I realize, wow, okay, so I'm altering my consciousness, and if I'm not conscious of what's happening, I can very easily be manipulated. A lot of Buddhism is keeping your mind clear so you can think clearly about what's going on. That's why the fifth precept, you're not supposed to drink any alcohol. Yeah. It's to keep you from being deluded. Delusion is a problem, like I said, because when you're deluded, you don't know you're deluded because it's delusion. So that's the tough one.
No, with me,
you were saying that you should have these, I don't know, crutches to that you are. What's the word I'm looking for?
Freedom.
You're relying on.
Oh, at one time. Yeah, at one time.
But also these things, music as an example, it can be argued as being part of you. So
that's that.
Yeah.
See, that in itself is kind of where we're going here. Like when you allow something to define who you are, you know what I mean? Like,
but I suppose it's the old thing of too much is a bad thing. You can have something that can assist in your definition.
I think I know what you're saying, Mark, but it's like, even though the music, whatever it touches is in you, there's a lot more in you.
Right. There's more than just music.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things in us that aren't all that good. I mean, we're not, Buddhism does not believe that we're all like, I'm not one of those Mahayana guys. They've got this Buddha nature thing. We all have this wonderful Buddha nature. And if we can just clear away all this debris, we would have this beautiful, beautiful, virtuous Buddha nature. If we were all innately virtuous, we couldn't sin. We couldn't do all these bad things we do to each other. What the Buddha said was that the mind is luminous. That means it's powerful. It has a lot of potentials. But it's also, there's a lot of stuff naturally in us, like greed. That's that third chakra. It's like it's mammalian. It's like, I need food. I mean, it's an instinct. It's important for survival on that level, but we don't want to accentuate that. Instead, we are at a point where we sublimate these things and we say, well, there's only one cookie left. You or in your case, a biscuit. Please have the last biscuit, even though you're hungry. All right. If we let that other thing tap, like, give me that, or you rush out, it's like, hey, look over there. Oh man, that biscuit disappeared. Dog must have got it. So yeah, the music can release things in us that aren't necessarily that good. But the other part of it is just the lack of control that you have over yourself, and that you voluntarily surrender it because you enjoy it. These are all things getting us away from being aware of ourselves in the moment right here where we can do our work. Because we don't want to work, we want to listen to the music, man. It's great. I play music, which is different from listening to it, to tell you the truth. I spend most of my time worrying about where my fingers are going to go next and what time everything's doing and what the drummer's doing and da-da-da-da. It's actually more like a big three-dimensional time-space puzzle that I'm playing. And I have to make everything happen at the same time, so...
I suppose a good example of this, for us three especially, would be coffee and cigarettes, or coffee and tobacco.
Well, see, you're looking at it just in a negative perspective, but this is also, it goes a lot more directions than this, because like I've mentioned too, the emergence of a third element. Okay, and this applies to everything. It doesn't just have to with triality. It doesn't have to do with just Christianity or the number 3. Okay, it's when you get the emergence of the third element. Okay, that's the equivalence of complexity. Okay, so when you have that inspiration, that potential that Otto's talking about, that's also the emergence of a third element. Okay, it might not necessarily define you and make you think of yourself as being that, because that's what it's really about. When you start defining yourself as a certain thing, like music or anything, that's a part of yourself. Okay,
that limits you too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that third element is kind of like the spark of inspiration, or the complexity, or the potential that's within you that can be released if you don't confine yourself to that restricted area within yourself. You know what I mean? And that's what I found about it, and this isn't like some abstract philosophy. This is actually a blueprint for your inner world. The way you think, the way you act, who you are, it's an actual blueprint to that if you live that kind of life.
I suppose you could argue it's sort of abstract within the context of what you're saying.
Before we leave the mind altering substances thing, I will point out that the Buddha only disapproved of things that clouded the mind. A lot of very high attainment Southeast Asian Ajahns and Megatheriums and such like consume cigarettes, coffee, and tea in great quantity. In fact, I believe the only 3 substances that I know of that bhikkhus seem to be allowed are coffee and tea, caffeine, tobacco, and cannabis. And the cannabis is only for medical reasons. Otherwise, I don't know of any other substances that they're allowed to consume. But they don't. I don't think those are considered to be mind clouding.
Well, I used to enjoy going. This will help pan out where he gets a little bit more support. But I used to enjoy going to AA meetings at Catholic churches, because outside of every Catholic church is an ashtray for everybody who wants to go out and smoke a cigarette, and I always thought that was cool.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
And this was after they banned smoking in public areas. Well,
it would have been banned in the church anyway, I'm sure. So the ashtrays were probably there even way before that, simply for the parishioners. And then they probably got tired of sweeping up the cigarette butts on the front steps of the church.
Right.
I'm just thinking on the point of Mormons later day sayings, where they take the view that you shouldn't take anything that could adulterate.
No caffeine, no tobacco. Can't get caffeinated Coca-Cola. It used to be you cross the state line over into Utah. Or I was reading something like he went to the airport there and you landed and you couldn't get caffeine cola or something. I forget. I think they've probably altered that since then. But
Yeah.
I think that the biggest thing that really helps out when it comes to all this is I think the key is the complexity, and you can find complexity in everything. Like in computer science, how we all love to talk about computer science, the majority of everything that involves that is symmetry, and the magic in computer science is actually the complexity that comes with it. And that can be applied to pretty much everything if you really look outside the box and kind of relate it to other things that are going on around you. You know what I mean? It's not just in computer science. It's not just in spirituality or religion. It's everywhere. Like, can you imagine a world that was just about duality?
No gray areas, right?
Right, no gray areas, no emergence of complexity whatsoever. Like imagine a mother and a father freaking not having a crazy little baby drive them nuts for the first 5 years of their lives.
Well, the human race would disappear within 100 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you need the insanity of a 5-year-old running around destroying everything in order for you to have that missing complexity in your life. You know what I mean?
I'll tell that to my mother next time I see her. I just heard something on the internet last night, Matt. I'm going to see her tomorrow, so I'll tell her that.
I just, that's the kind of stuff that actually makes sense to me now. It's like, and I had a really hard time with being able to incorporate that emergence concept into a lot of the things that I've been learning when it comes to dualities and stuff, because I was always wanting to hold on to duality as being the end all to everything, but the truth is there is that third element, that spark that causes change, and it's everywhere, and it's amazing how it can affect you. It can turn you from one thing into another. It can help you with change. That's a big good example right there. Change. That's really a good example for complexity. The ability to change.
You want to direct that change in a skillful way.
Right. But
not let that be dictated by outside sources that might not have your best interests at heart.
Exactly. But it still is complexity, even though it is control. You know what I mean? That's the important thing to remember. It's still complexity. Because we were talking about it the other day. It's like you can't sit still. You either go forward or you go backwards. There's no sitting still. You know
That's
what I mean?
right. People think they stop and they slide backwards. You start sliding, you got to keep moving forward or you go back. There's no choice. The only thing we have to do.
They got an old saying that says you either grow or you go.
Yeah, that's it. Use it or lose it. Well, we used to say too sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mark Edworthy's quiet. I don't understand what's going on here.
That is because you're a mere colonial. He is speaking to us in the language of the eyebrow. Right along with receive standard English and other things that you only get at the best public schools. No doubt an old Etonian. He would never admit it.
he just gave one of those looks, dude, just to eyeball the camera and stuff. I've started naming them like Man Meat, because like all the women that we talk to now just love them to death. It's like, oh my god, dude, they just want them to sit there and give the Fabio flip.
Well, every show needs its different characters. You need the guy that who was this girl I used to know. She ran a security team at the stadium, and she said those guys are eye candy. She'd hire these great big brawny guys, the beefcake guys. That's my eye candy. So we need somebody that's the eye candy. Somebody that dresses well, somebody that can flip that Zippo with such nonchalance, and hand rolled cigarettes, so cool, so debonair, and so rebellious to smoke cigarettes. And like I said, I bet he's got a rotary dial phone there somewhere on his desk. So yeah.
Brains as well. Allegedly.
So yeah, we all, everyone has different, Roger, you bring your sly good humor, your wit. You sneak right in, and
I'm still jealous though, because I'm supposed to be the ladies' man. You know what I mean? I like, oh my goodness! Now Mark Edworthy just snuck in there and took it away. He's the man meat. You know what I mean?
He does the live camera thing too, so people can see him. You and I tend to hide behind the icons more. I come out once in a while, but usually I'm sitting in the car where it's so dark you couldn't see me much anyway. But yeah. No, everybody has to bring something different to the show. So,
right.
I think we all contribute well. And Mark Edworthy can contribute with just a look sometimes.
Well, yeah. First, I've been told I'm quite an physically expressive person. So, hence why I do the camera thing.
Yeah.
After all, expressions are a form of communication in themselves.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Yeah. It's interesting. Bob is the same way when you talk to her. I don't know if you spend much time talking with her, like visually, but maybe it is a British thing. I don't know. Usually they say Italians, but yeah, I always joke with her about her histrionic gestures. But it reflects her in her readings. She's very dramatic. Between you, me, and the lamppost, hopefully she's not listening, but she always reminded me of Honoria Glossop, if you know the character. From the
I was just thinking Leonard Nimoy with his famous sort of eyebrow sort of expressions.
Oh, right. Yeah. The eyebrow. He was good. So yeah, this is turned into quite a show. A show, Roger. How do you keep producing all these great shows? What's your secret?
I just let you guys talk and keep my mouth shut. That's the benefit of going to 12-step programs, because you get a sponsor, and a sponsor tells you to sit down, shut up, and listen.
That's a good skill. Very few people have it.
And I tell you guys all the time, I'm like, I do not make these shows whatsoever. You guys are the show. Like, the stuff that I just put out there, it just springs into something beautiful, because you guys bring up other stuff that's more important than what I said. You know what I mean? And it really is true. If you don't believe me, like, after we're done here, literally go back and watch again. Okay, I guarantee you will say more important stuff than what I say.
I think you are underplaying yourself a bit.
Well, that's called humility.
Okay.
Okay.
Not like us. He's humble, not like us.
Let me point out what the true meaning and definition of humility is, okay? Like, when people tell you that they're practicing humility, they're automatically telling you that they are selfish and self-centered. Okay? That's the reality of it all. So just realize that when somebody tells you that they're practicing humility, they're automatically telling you, without saying it, that they're selfish and self-centered. And like,
being having humility
humble,
is not something that you talk about, just something that you do.
Right.
Yeah.
And and that's really what a lot of this has come down to is the self. Me and Otto's been talking about maybe doing a discussion on it and everything, and that's really where where this conversation is going. It's going to the self. You know, when you learn how to eliminate self, something else freaking manifests. You know what I'm saying? And it's not your selfishness and self-centeredness. It's something beyond that. That's what I really believe in. You know what I mean? It's
Also, there was the self-differential difference thing. Being well, Brits, we British are well known for mocking ourselves. Arguably, you both do as well.
I never do that. I'm beyond that.
Hey?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Guru Raja, Sri Raja Guru, he is beyond
For
all
me.
himself.
For me, it's like my past. Okay, Bob Dub was wanting me to come on and do a show with her and talk about my past. Now, for most people who haven't learned some of the stuff that I've learned, they would live a life of guilt and shame and not want to discuss it. I've learned that that's not the best way to do it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't regret my past, nor do I wish to shut the door on it. You know what I mean? And I can go further with that and say that I can actually turn those experiences into something that can help somebody else later on down the line. Because not a lot of people have lived the life I've lived, done the things I've done, and they can't reach out to another human being and actually relate to them on that level because they've never experienced it themselves. You know what I mean? So in that aspect, I can actually turn something negative into something that's positive. Does that make sense?
Well, if we can learn from other people's experiences, that's always good. If we don't have to go through them ourselves, then I think sometimes if people know that you've done something like they've done, they know that you know what you're talking about because they've kind of seen that too.
Yeah. So I mean, you can always turn something into something positive. Like even your bad experiences, just remember they can be turned around and used for a positive tool to help somebody else.
I'm not sure. There's the old argument about experiencing these things yourself, therefore to build your character.
Yeah. You know, the experience can include the experience of hearing Roger talk about his experiences. That's an experience too. Yeah. And you can relate it to experiences you've had. I mean, I was listening to this cat that Roger turned me on to, Dr. Burns Brady, was it?
Yeah.
And he was talking about some terrible experiences he went through with his family and crazy stuff. His daughter tried to kill him with a shotgun or something when she was 15 or something like that. And she was all twisted on like really bad drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. And it's like, no, I've never had that happen. I've never been in that bad a situation. I don't think I need to go through that in order to I really don't want to, but I've been in some situations that were pretty bad. And when I listened to his story, I realized, yeah, that could have turned into something as bad as that if things had just been a little different or a little more intense or whatever. In other words, I might not have gone that far down that path, but I went far enough to be able to see where he was from where I was standing, kind of deal. So I think something like that can augment. And of course, you hear war stories from people, and the wiser ones do learn from it. But like we were saying before, I know a lot of guys older than me that are still think that they're rock and rollers in their 20s and stuff. And I okay, that's, if that's as far as you want to go with your life, okay. That's, they're not, as long as they pay their taxes and don't hurt people around them and stuff, but I sort of consider it a waste, but, I try not to judge people too harshly either, because, we all make choices. We can't all be Mark Edworthy,
we can't.
of the group. Best dressed man in the room, as always.
We can,
I
but we
wanna buy
have
a
to.
suit now. I gotta get a suit. I'm feeling
We have to set ourselves
Plaid.
to really, really high standards in order to achieve that kind of a mastery of
Yeah.
of Britishness. You
We
know
mere
what I mean?
colonials. We can only aspire.
He's like a
All
Devon
of other
man.
countries.
He's like a Devon man. You know what I mean? He just
Yeah.
and don't ever call him no farmer. I
No,
swear,
no,
he
not that
will-
guy. No
he
dirt under his fingernails.
he will tell you. He's
Yeah.
like, don't make me talk like a petty farmer.
Oh, those guys with the smocks and the straw hat, and
How dare you? How dare you? So-
you know a few good farmers.
Yeah, you do.
oh yeah.
Hmm.
But you can be a gentleman farmer. They have gentleman farmers. There's that. I always thought that would be cool to be a gentleman farmer.
Yeah, the one thing that I did want to bring up, and this is something that I've always forgotten to always mention, but it's like when it comes to like judging, like I think a person does that naturally. You know what I mean? So in reality, we really don't have to judge other people because like. There's one thing I always forget to point out, and this is we have a conscious and then we have the subconscious. And we have these unconscious tendencies. And that actually is where I was referring to as well when it comes to this third element. You know what I mean? Because you have to think about like conscious alignment, which that's a lot of what Otto was talking about. That's where your thoughts, your perception, and your intention, they all interact together. You know what I mean? And that defines basically the trajectory of your life, you know? So, I mean, this is kind of like a loop that's being completed, you know? So, and if you look at that whole way of the way the mind works, and you relate that to like the cosmos, even, you know what I mean? It's reflected onto us. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not just us. You know what I mean? Like you take a look at even like stories. We've had conversations on the show about stories. And how you had the repetitive stories that annoys the hell out of everybody, but there's always that little piece in the story that's different from the other version. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that defines that time and that period in history where freaking something changed. So, you know what I mean? So they can go back and they can go, okay, this is the kind of thought that was taking place during this time period in England, because now Robin Hood is a hero instead of a thief that's running around murdering nobles. You know what I mean?
I suppose that depends on who you ask.
Right.
Yeah.
And the location and the area and stuff like that. It's really interesting how all of that kind of blends in with like even the way that we think consciously and subconsciously. It reflects one another. It's kind of like a whispered legend or a repeated symbol. You know what I mean? An imprint in history, if you want to call it that. I think.
Well, we are the species that tells stories, and we primarily tell stories to ourselves. And you knew he was coming up. Dr. Julian Jaynes always defined the consciousness as an imaginary eye narratizing it to itself in an imaginary mind space. We tell ourselves a story about ourselves all the time, and we tell another story about the events that we recorded and remembered somehow. And it's interesting how facts, solid facts tend to be remembered in a form until you get, we were talking before about who was left in the bulrushes. Well, let's see, Moses and Sargon and Krishna and Oedipus and this hero and that hero. And whether it happened or not, because they were that hero, they took on that history. I always mispronounce his name. I don't know how you pronounce it. I believe it's Mircea Eliade, Mircea Eliade. And he wrote a very interesting book on the Eternal Return, and talked about how people, before we had this very linear Western historical approach, tended to view time as a more cyclic thing, because that was, these were mostly, agricultural or pastoral communities that were tied to growing food, and this all had to do with the seasons. And one year is pretty much like another. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a job where you just basically do the same thing every week. And I worked at this one place, and one day I'm like, is it tomorrow or is it yesterday? Because you just you lose track of what day of the week it is, because they wouldn't think in terms of weeks. They thought about the quarter days, and the cross quarter days were about as much as they needed, because it had to do with their work, their harvest, and this and that, or caring for the animals and things. So if something big happened, it would tend to fit into this cycle of stories and this and that. And you had the king, and what's his name? That's less important. He's just the king. It's just the king. Like the pharaoh. It's just the pharaoh. The king is dead. Long live the king. It's just the same. And pretty soon they all have the same history, and they tell the stories about the current king's father that they told about the current king's great-grandfather, because he's the king, and of course the king did these things, sort of deal. And even today, I mean, they always talk about Herodotus, or possibly Herodotus, and some people love his history. Some people say it's all full of lies, but really I think he was a very honest historian, because he took the facts he had, and he told them in a very human way. And I think that he would be the first to admit this if you presented it with him. I mean, I love a history where you've got like these long speeches by generals before battles, or these very complex, rationalizations for seizing royal power that take up a page and a half to his followers. And more likely it was like, kill the bastards and I'll let you keep all the booty in the city. Yay! Okay, most of it, instead of like.
Well, see, that's the weird thing about triality. When I started doing research on that, I started learning about complexity and symmetry. But then, like the word elegance, that's something else that I later on I think would be a good topic to get into, because people don't really understand what the word elegance means. Like you just said, the whole long drawn out explanation. Now, it goes back to even computer science, like a code that's an elegant code. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's a short, simple code or if it's a long, drawn-out code. It makes sense. It's elegant. Okay, if the person that reads that code understands it, and it's drawn out and it's easy to understand, it is an elegant code. And that's the same way about literature. It's the same way about philosophy. It's everywhere. That's what elegance represents. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that I'd like to talk about at some point too.
I'm not sure you can have complex elegance.
It's
really Baroque music, though. I mean, Bach is elegant but very complex. Brandenburg concertos or Goldberg variations, I would call that elegant and complex. But I mean, complexity, really elegant complexity, is going to have an underlying simplicity. We're getting near scalar invariance and fractals here. Yeah. But, I think you can have a simplicity on the larger level containing that complexity. Because my first thought is like, Bach or like Baroque composers or something like that.
Well, you can find it there, but you can also find it in theories of like antimatter and things like that. The stuff that a lot of stuff that Mike talks about. Okay, you'll find it in there.
I'd like to have some antimatter. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do anything with it. I just like to have a jar of it. Probably have some kind of magnetic containment field inside. Oh, that's my antimatter. Conversation piece.
Well, Well, like I believe we've had conversations about fractal gravity and the golden ratio. You know what I mean? Um, that that would be something that's a part of it. But then you also get into stuff like phase conjugation and stuff. And then there's a whole bunch. I've actually wanted to have serious conversations about this because it's really mind blowing, and like the elegance that goes behind a lot of this complexity is just, I mean, it. Well, first of all, like people are hoodwinked by a lot of stuff that they call science. You know what I mean? When you take and you try to draw on the idea that math is the one and only universal truth, then you're false. You know what I mean? There's nothing that guarantees that is actually true. You know, you're sitting there and you're taking calculations from a black hole that's mathematically correct, but you've never seen or observed a black hole at all. That's not
right. It's all indirect. Well, mathematics are a wonderful tool, and again, I'm impressed with something that can make predictions in the real world, like how much material you need for a bridge, how long a piece of metal will be able to be used before it needs to be replaced or tested, you know, things like that. That's pretty damn good. You know, we can go and build a bridge, and we know ahead of time what we need. That is a kind of predicting the future. Sometimes there are mistakes. There's the famous footage of the bridge that came down because of the wind or whatever it was. But it's not the same as the universe itself, obviously. I don't really think it's I think the way to look at it is it's something that we've been able to apply to a lot of things, just about everything that we want to do in the physical world. As far as manipulating the physical world, we can express mathematically and use maths in order to manipulate materials and times and stuff. So it's an incredibly powerful tool. And the Pythagoreans scared the hell out of those guys when they started noticing what this stuff could do. This is like magic. You know, you could predict how to make a musical instrument. You know, you could just do this and know how long to make the strings and this and that, and then you pluck the strings and it sounds beautiful. It's harmony. Now, there's no reason why we should like harmonies, but we do as animals. It's just our ears. You know, you play it, and if something is discordant. Discord, I mean, it's right in the word, you know, it's very unpleasant. So we found that these numbers actually associate with something that touches our hearts. We were just talking about how music alters consciousness. It alters perception. It alters how you look at everything. So yeah, when they supposedly, you know, we have a lot of stories about the Pythagoreans, but apparently some of the things we considered normal mathematics were secrets, religious secrets. You know, you weren't told about, you know, the binomial. Well, they don't think they had the binomial theorem, but, you know, you weren't told this little thing of what we would consider basic geometry or something until you've been there for like 20 years and we knew we could trust you with this vast secret, this and that. So yeah, I think that numbers are really fascinating. I think that they're very useful. And I think they give us a glimpse of something. They give us an idea of how the universe seems to work, but it's only how it seems to work. You know, there's a lot of people used to talk about God as the supreme mathematician, the supreme geometer, the supreme person that can just plan everything out because it's so interrelated. But you know, it's the numbers that are interrelated. The numbers are interrelated because the things themselves are interrelated. But I guess where I'm trying to go is that the map is not the territory. The maths are not the actual universe, and there are going to be aspects of the universe not covered by mathematics. That is not an impossible thing. But we tend to define the universe as that which we can describe and control through math. And anything else that we perceive that we don't seem to be able to do this with, we tend to dismiss. As somebody once said, we tend to equate reality with visibility. And this isn't always the case. So, my little rant.
No, it was actually pretty good. It because like one of the things that I started really getting into is isodual lights, and there's also Centelli's isodual. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it has to do with anti-gravity.
Ooh.
And it could be seen as like the repulsive counterpart to compression and implosive gravity, basically. You know, now this is something that's always caused like controversy, I guess you could say, because it's not the popular theory that goes according to anti-gravity relationships, and you know, it's basically an alternative cause of gravity, you know.
Right.
But since it's not accepted by the mainstream scientific community that Mark hates me saying, he always points that out. It's like, that sounds like a utopian socialist kind of metaphor. but that's the only thing I've ever known, you know, to talk about it, you know what I mean? But this has to do a lot with like anti-photons. Like you always hear about photons. This has to do with anti-photons, antimatter.
So would an antiphoton be like a particle of darkness? That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, it's an isodual.
Like if you could flood a place with antiphotons, it would be like a flashlight only operating backwards, a dark light. I don't think that's what actually happened, but that was my first thought. Probably things would just blow up or something. I don't know. It would be cool.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I picture it as being, to be honest with you, because isodual light is it, and that's what it deals with. Like a photon is light. You know what I mean? So
right, yeah.
When you go the opposite, anti, it would make you think the opposite of light.
Yeah, because darkness is a negative quality. You can say poetically that darkness crept in through the window, but it doesn't really. It's just an absence of light. But if you could make light an absence of dark instead of dark an absence of light, that would be interesting. A flash dark. Come into a room, click it, and everybody can't see. What the hell? Who turned off the lights? That'd be kind of, I don't know what you could do with that. Play a lot of pranks, I guess. Rob banks, maybe? I don't know.
And one thing I want to get into more too, which I really wish I had time to do, is like, I've heard people say that there's a difference between dark gravity and antimatter. You know, which I don't know how true that is.
I don't know anything about it.
Or antimatter, you know.
Define dark gravity.
Well, dark matter. Dark matter.
Oh, dark matter. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay. That's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dark matter is just matter we can't see, right?
Yeah, to a large extent, that's what it basically.
Isn't it like basically something they came up with to explain why some of their actual physical readings weren't keeping to the theory? I mean, they do that a lot with astrophysics. I mean, it's such a huge universe. If something, the math says this should be there, well, we don't see it. Well, maybe it's because of this. We'll plug this in. I mean, that's how we got black holes. Don't get me going.
Yeah.
So the point of dark matter in that concept is to say, really use as an excuse.
Well, it's like, you know how we were talking a few weeks ago about satellites or telescopes. Okay. Everybody was talking about the red.
Oh, the redshift, yeah.
The redshift, okay.
The Hubble constant, which might not be such a constant, if Halton Arp's ideas are correct. And I think he might be right.
I wanted to make a comment on that earlier, but I forgot to. And the thing that I wanted to mention was for you to be able to even view the color red through a telescope, you have to adjust the amount of silicone under the plates for the dish. Okay, that not until recently, within the last 30-40 years, have they been able to actually see the color red in outer space, until they figured out that the layer of silicone that's underneath the plates that are on the actual telescope, the dish,
the mirror, you mean?
yeah,
reflector?
Yeah, the dish.
Okay.
Underneath those panels, there's silicone underneath it.
Right.
And they didn't understand that you needed to have a thicker layer of silicone to go underneath that, just so you could see the color red.
Oh, I had not heard that.
Yeah, it's actually a newer discovery. The telescope that actually first came out with it is that one that's in Hawaii. It's up on top of the mountain. It's the it has to do with like a car factory company that owns it, but it's
Mauna Kea?
Maybe
Mauna Kea. I don't know. I don't follow that stuff much anymore. I know about Mount Palomar.
Mhm.
But presumably, if in the creation, in the evolution of a telescope, people have tried different materials and different thicknesses and come up with the ideal material thickness.
Well, they were originally, I think, refracting telescopes, probably. And refractors are basically, for really big telescopes, I think the Yerkes is the biggest, or one of the biggest. I forget how big that was, 20-inch or 25. Not that big, but the reflecting telescopes seem to be the ones they could make really big, get a lot of light gathering. And I know Mount Palomar was famous because it was a whole 100 inches. But I know they have much bigger ones, and now they have these VLA, very large arrays of telescopes. So they're actually getting better images from Earth-based telescopes than they're getting from the space-based, because of the technology's improved so much. One of the problems was always with the seeing. You know, they're looking at a star through the atmosphere, and there's a certain amount of atmospheric distortion. So what they started doing was taking a lot of little photographs, right? And then they could remove the frames from the times when the atmosphere was distorting the light. And then there's I'm not a photographer, I have no idea. But anyway, basically the result is they can get an amazingly clear exposure of these objects and remove the distortion. So that was the big argument for having space-based telescopes. But between that and the way they take telescopes and like have them miles away from each other, like several of them in a huge array, a very large array. They all take pictures simultaneously. It's the effect of having a telescope a mile across or something like that. So the Hubble takes great photos, but I haven't heard that they were going to be sending up any other space telescopes anytime soon, because from what I've heard, ground-based astrophotography is just as good, if not better. It's better. It's a lot cheaper, certainly.
Yeah.
So I still like space telescopes, so don't get me wrong.
For me, it all comes back to waves, and I think that's the one thing that a lot of scientists have a hard time with, because when they hear waves, they think that somehow this is metaphysics and it's not physics. Yet when you go and you listen to just a teacher in school, they teach you the different phases of light, and how you know these signals are being transmitted to produce that light. You know,
Light waves.
Yeah, waves. These signals, these waves. You know what I mean?
Wavelength. Yeah.
Light is determined by the length of that wave, but that's the only place where they want that to be. They don't want you to bring it into any other type of science, because once you do that, you've crossed over into the metaphysical world. oh no, next you're going to be talking about ghosts and UFOs. You know what I mean? And oh
Or
man,
ghostly UFOs, yeah.
or
The ghost of UFOs.
you'll be
Ooh.
hanging out with all those hippies in India that think you can talk to plants on a subconscious level.
Hey, now
Yeah.
that's a thought. Not just, how about doing like ghost hunting the ghosts of aliens that crashed at Roswell and were killed? Maybe their ghosts still wander there.
I know.
Contact an alien ghost. That
I
would
know.
be
There's a documentary, or not a documentary. It's a show out. I forgot his name. I keep forgetting him. He's the guy that always wore the hat and had the beard, and he passed away here recently. But he actually had an investigation where he went out to a hospital that was supposed to be holding the aliens. In that hospital, it's abandoned now, but it is haunted.
Ooh.
It's haunted by alien ghosts.
Wow, alien! Somebody thought of it before me. Damn, I
Yep.
thought he's good. He was good. Alien ghost.
Well, he was one of the best because he's the one who came up with the alien UFO crash that happened on the farm that knocked down that windmill.
Oh, Aurora, the Aurora
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
Yeah, with the headstone. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was. I wish I could remember his name. Oh man,
Oh, I think I know who you mean. Yeah, used to do a newsletter or something.
yeah.
I think
Yes.
I used to get that. His name.
Yeah.
I think it's something else. It'll come to me. I think I wrote to him a couple of times, but I think I kind of out weirded him a little bit.
Well, yeah.
This was before the internet, and
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I think he asked me what my philosophy of life was. So I sent him like a couple of pages. He never got back to me. He just stopped writing me.
So like I just this is actually some of the stuff that I thought would be cool to kind of like go back over because like on this show when we left off on it I got to the point where I was wanting to kind of go over reconciliation, but before I started talking about that I kind of wanted to go through some of this stuff because I think reconciliation is something that has been mentioned a lot, not only in science, but you can find it in religion and philosophy too. So, later on, I think that would be the next thing to get back into. I just wanted to kind of go back over this because it's been quite a while since we've done the third thing, hasn't it? It's been well over a month, I'd say.
Wow,
If
that's a while. The days fly past.
Yeah, it could have been maybe 2 weeks. I'm an idiot when it comes to stuff like
I think it's
timekeeping.
closer to
Well,
that.
on some planets, 2 weeks I'm sure would be a month.
Yeah.
Depends on the planetary orbit. It reminds me that there's a saying in Buddhism: "Days and nights fly past. What are you becoming?"
Mm-hmm. So with that brilliant saying that you just said, let's go ahead and bring this to an end and ask for everybody to give their socials so that everybody, whoever watches, can find a way of getting in touch with you if they wanted to ask you some questions. We'll start with Mark Edworthy.
Because he was drinking coffee.
That's right.
You did that deliberately, Mark.
I was watching. No joke. It's all good.
I should do that more often. Somebody asked me for some information answers. Yeah. Finds.com under the username Medworthy.
Okay, how about you, Otto? How can people get in touch with you?
Well, you can check out my website, navakavada.org. That's NAVAKAVADA. It's spelled just like it sounds. And I am also on Minds.com, AutoX. You'll find me there. We also have a Navakavada YouTube channel, a BitChute channel, and look for me at Rogers Hangout on Teams. That's all for now.
Okay. And you can find me, like Otto said, at Otto or Rogers Hangout. You can also on Teams. You can also find me at Rogers Hangout on Elements Matrix, as well as the Wonderful World of Weirdness, which you can find on Discord. Just go in, type in the Wonderful World of Weirdness, and we are there. As well as that, we are also on minds.com at Roger_Hanson as well. I am Roger at ROGLOL1973 on X. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. We would really love to hear your feedback and hear what you have to say about the topics that's been discussed here on the show. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end the episode. I hope you guys have a good night, good morning, whatever the time of day is for you. And we will talk to you later.